We are fortunate enough today to have Scott Fox, founder and CEO of Startup Council. And he's a great operator here in Southern California. Basically, he owns Orange County and LA County, to start with. And a great helper to all these startup founders. Scott, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Okay, sure. Well, thanks for that introduction, Anshuman. Nice to see you. Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Fox. I'm a serial internet entrepreneur. These days, I'm mostly an angel investor, actually, and I'm an author as well. I wrote these books behind me to help entrepreneurs all over the world get involved with digital ventures. And these days, I spend a lot of time, as Anshuman said, working with early stage companies all over the world to help mentor them, invest in them, and basically accelerate their success. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Scott, for giving us time today. As you know, the topic today is from idea to investment, the journey of early stage funding. I would like to start with some stats. 20% of the startup start with less than $5,000 in initial capital. And another one that I have is 14% need more than $100,000. A startup with co-founders raise 30% more capital than those with just one founder. So with that, idea and validation, if I start a founder is thinking of starting his startup, how they should go about validating their idea?
Validating the idea. Yeah, that's a great question because I meet far too many founders who have great ideas, but haven't really moved past that stage. And I think historically, it might have been possible to get people's attention and maybe even talk them into investing with just an idea. But those days are gone. These days, you really need to have more than that. And they generally call that traction. And that can mean lots of things, but it basically means demonstration of some sort of progress and really convincing someone other than you and your mom that you have a good idea. So validating that is a key first step. And I think the number one way to do that is something that isn't talked about enough, which is engaging with customers. It's one thing to have a great idea between you and your teammates and convince each other that you're onto something, but without hearing from real people and not just friends and family, but actual customers and not even just actual customers, but customers who have a budget, who are willing to pay. That's really the key. I mean, this is business, right? I mean, it's awesome to do social impact things and have hobbies, but if you're talking about a business, you need customers who are willing to pay. So put another way, validation is really about spending less time on supply and more on demand. Who's out there that has a demand for your idea, product, service, whatever it is, and they're willing to pay? And that's where I would be spending my time these days.
Yeah, great. Of course, you start with an idea, but if you get it validated as early as possible, then not only you are saving your time, but you are also saving a ton of your money and the effort that will go into that. Because,
good point. Very good point. Yeah, I mean, we all have limited time in our lives, right? We all have the same 24 hours, 7 days a week. How are you going to invest yours? And just at some point, you got to just stop talking to each other and go out and engage with the real world. And that's what validation, that's the validation that investors want to see.
Yeah. I always feel that, as a startup founder, one should really look into and, run with the idea, but, be ready to fail fast and fail quick rather than, trying to just keep that dream going on and, keep investing your time, money, and effort. If the market forces are showing that whatever you are trying to do is not worth carrying it forward anyway. So obviously, in later segment we'll be talking about why mentors and advisors are important for startup founders. But give us some tips about Scott. Market research. Let's consider somebody going into FMCG product or SaaS tech, which is very common these days, or AI based companies, the startups, the technology startups. What type of market research they should do?
Well, there's all levels, right? And a lot of it depends on your budget. So if you have some money, there's fantastic firms that will do all kinds of market research for you. You can spend a fortune you can spend your entire seed round just on research, right? But what I think is more interesting and more challenging, and I think what you're asking, at least for this audience, is how do you do this when you don't have all those resources? You mentioned a lot of startups start with less than $5,000. Well, what are you supposed to do if you're a bootstrapped founder for example, and you don't have $12,000 to pay for PitchBook to find the right investors, right? I mean, how do you get out there and research? And this sounds really simple, but I think it has a lot of merit, which is to make a list of 10 ideal customers. And if there's more than you have, say, 2 co-founders, then 10 each. So you got 30 names. Call them. I mean, that sounds crazy these days. I mean, you might actually pick up the phone and call people, or at least email them, or find a conference where a lot of those people are going to be and go and actually talk to them. And the reason this is helpful, of course, is that it validates that they're actually interested and they might pay, like I said. But also you want to start generating numbers that demonstrate the traction that I mentioned earlier. Investors want to see traction, and traction is not just, like I said, not just you think it's a good idea, but others think it's a good idea, but ideally quantified. Investors love numbers. So how can you make numbers? Well, if you talk to 10 people and your 2 co-founders talk to 10 people, you have 30 founders and you have 30 outreaches. Okay, they don't all get through. Let's say 20 of those you actually engage. And then you have feedback and you have, well, 17 of these people took our call. 12 of them we actually interviewed. 8 of them were very interested, and 4 actually said that they would buy at this price. Then you have some kind of numbers, right? You can develop some charts and some graphs and things that investors love to see, visualization of those numbers, and it brings the story to life. And it kind of really makes it look like you really did it instead of you just said you did it, which is important as well. So is that the kind of thing you meant? Is that helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. So, rather than spending a ton of money in professional companies who can do the market research for you, you can reach out to your potential customers. If you have 3 founders, then 10 each, and then take feedback from them about maybe the product market fit or the timeline or what you are developing, and that way you will get the input of your real customers, that who are potential customers basically, but
well said. That's what I meant exactly. And this is hard to do, especially like because you mentioned SaaS. If you have a software engineering model, your whole idea is to build things that scale, right, and that are repeatable with low or zero marginal cost. And so you're in the idea of building systems, and what I just suggested, it is not a system, and it's really annoying and manual. But sometimes you have to do things that don't scale just to prove your point. Because I run into a lot of founders, and you probably do too, Anshuman, right? Where they have a brilliant idea what they're going to build after 2 years and $10 million of investment, right? They've got this huge, Taj Mahal that they're on their way to, but we can't, speaking as an investor, we can't like give you $10 million based on that. We need to see some baby steps, walk before you run sort of thing. And what I just suggested is a way that you can walk. And it also shows us that you have the hustle, right? That you're going to actually engage and you're going to do this. You're not just a talker, you're a doer, even if it doesn't scale.
Yeah. So now the word MVP, the minimum viable product, for a SaaS platform or for a technology platform, what is an MVP? Because I have heard this, that we are building the MVP, it is in beta release, or the investor is asking for an MVP. What really is an MVP, and how much time and effort from a startup founder should go into developing an MVP?
Yeah, that varies a lot from business to business, right? If you're building a semiconductor company or a biotech venture, that's different than an MVP for a consumer SaaS product or a direct consumer, a beverage product or something. But basically, the idea is, and I know you know this, so we're just talking about it between friends. MVP is the idea that you're proving that it's not just an idea, that it can be built and that it will be built and that you are the person to build it. And again, this is a lot we're looking for. As much as for results, we're looking for that you have the hustle and the grit to make it happen with limited resources. That there's an inherent test here that isn't entirely about the product. It's also about you. So, but focusing on the product part of it, you want to build enough that, again, you can start to demonstrate traction. All the early stage steps are in service of proving that you're making progress, also known as traction. So you build something that has enough to get reaction from those customers. So if it's a super complicated, capital intensive product, like aerospace parts or semiconductors, like I said a minute ago, it's probably just your MVP is probably going to be drawings and schematics and, or maybe a 3D model of something, that is fairly inexpensive compared to the millions or tens of millions you need to build the real thing. But if it's something lighter weight, like I said, a SaaS app or something like that, then you're going to build something with the basic functionality. And you might even start just with a PowerPoint slides of these are the different interfaces that we're going to build, and then show them to customers and get reaction and refine. And the idea is we want to see you, again, progress is the goal, growth. We're trying to see you started with A and then you did B, C, and you're creating a chart so that we can develop a sort of a paradigm in our mind of, oh, this person does things like this and they do them well and they do them consistently over time and they're delivering and they're making progress. So the MVP is both a minimum viable product, which is the classic definition, but there was also a friend of mine who called it minimum valuable product. So what you're going for is to move from the thing that barely works but proves your point to moving to something that is functional enough that the audience, meaning the customers, can agree that there's value. And that's what you're trying to demonstrate. You're trying to demonstrate momentum from 0 to 1 and then hopefully beyond, and then showing something that works enough that people are interested and start to see value and start to have buying discussions. That's kind of the progression that I see. Does that match your understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is going to be very beneficial for first-time founders who are either in the audience today or who will be listening to the recorded session through various broadcasting medium that we are going to use. Scott, common pitfall, the 2 or 3 points that we have discussed so far, your idea, how to validate an idea, how to use the potential customer to validate your idea, and then the MVP. What common pitfall have you seen during these 3 stages from early stage startup founder or a first time startup founder?
Yeah, well, as you know, I'm working on a new book, so I got a whole book of those coming for you. Lots of pitfalls, right? And to be fair, it's really easy to poke holes. I've been a founder. You're a founder, Anshuman. Every founder's working hard. So it's easy for those of us who are on the other side writing the checks to poke holes, and this isn't meant that way, and it never is. Especially those of us who are angel investors, we're volunteers, right? We're actually trying to help. Some of us may be more polite than others about it, but we're trying to help. So when we poke holes, it's really in an effort to try to help. So nobody take this too personally. But yeah, there are lots of common pitfalls. I mean, I guess one that bugs me a lot that I see quite often, and of course I'd like to hear yours too, Anshuman, is I see founders, you get so focused on the product that when it comes time to pitch investors, you give us a product pitch instead of a business pitch. And what we really need to hear about is the business, right? And I know you love the product. You're devoting your life to solving some problem. That's great. And this is your solution, and you're spending tons of time, money on it. But we need to hear about the business. So if you give me the same pitch that you give to a potential customer, that's not going to work. I need to hear about the metrics.
Yeah.
Do you make them? What do customers pay for it? What do they pay today? What will they pay tomorrow? Will they renew? Like, give me numbers so that I can build an equation and literally a spreadsheet, because that's what I'm going to do. A spreadsheet that outlines the progress you're making. And that's one thing that I'd like to see founders do a lot more of is change gears when you're talking to investors, because honestly, your product doesn't matter to us quite as much as the potential return on the investment, because that's what we are. We're investors. We're not product buyers. We're investors. So that's kind of big picture. We can get more specific if you'd like, but that's one that I would say. How about you?
Yeah, but for me, Scott, I always say that, don't love your product or platform, love your customers.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Try to build something for your customer. Don't try to build something for yourself, because at times, after sitting through so many pitching, I have seen that the founders are so passionate about their platform, and they have all the right to do that, but they are not many a times customer centric. They feel that this is the biggest thing that they are building, and this is going to change the whole world.
Right.
And when I see at an angel round somebody talking about 2.3 billion TAM, I think something is wrong in that pitch right then and there.
Right.
So if the founders start loving their customer and try to build something which really solves the customer problem, then they have not only a product or a platform but a paying customer. So I think they should always be focused like that. We
That's
only
good.
have 15 minutes more to go, and I
Can
see.
I add something on that? Because
Yeah,
you
yeah,
touched
yeah,
on something
sure, sure.
that you raise an issue that doesn't get talked about enough, I think, which is that when picking a customer that you want to fall in love with, you have a choice. You're a founder. The point of being a founder is that you don't have a job. You work for yourself and you get to steer the ship, right? So my point is simply this: if you pick a bunch of founders that you don't like, you're going to be miserable, right? So this is your opportunity just as a person, right? Like I like this, like I like motorcycles, but I don't like sailboats or whatever it is, right? And those are the people you're going to be spending a lot of time with. So as a person, not like as an MBA doing a big theory or a McKinsey consultant with a big strategy. I'm just saying, like as a person, like where do you want to spend your life? You're investing not just your money, but your life. Like where are you going to spend the next several years? The typical startup takes 5, 10 years, sometimes 20 years before it really pops. How are you going to invest that time? So it's your opportunity to pick not just a product and a solution, but the people that you want to spend a lot of time helping. And that's a big opportunity for you just as a person and the design of your own lifestyle. And I don't think that gets talked about as much.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we have 14 minutes left in this LinkedIn Live session. So we will field some question, but really quickly, for the benefit of the audience, for early stage founders, who are the investors?
Mm.
They should obviously the founders' capital need to go in first, and then the friends and family, and then maybe an angel round. So can you quickly take them through that process or through those steps?
Sure. The typical approach is you're suggesting is equity investment, where you sell part of the company in exchange for cash, and the idea, of course, is that you do as much as you can, and then it's kind of like an onion. You expand out different layers, right? Friends and family, then maybe angel investors, venture capital firms. But I want to point out also that there's a couple other routes that don't get talked about as much. One is grants. There are grants available from all sorts of city, county, federal programs, especially if you are a certain kind of person or product. You're a defense product, and the government might have grants for you. If you're an underrepresented minority of some sort, or you're from a certain geographical area, your college or university alma mater might have a program. There's programs, essentially scholarships, that are out there. And the other is debt. It gets talked about very little in the venture world, but if you are successful enough to generate some actual revenue or have some assets in the business, banks exist, and they've existed a lot longer than venture capitalists have, and they're there to make you loans. And most businesses, despite the media coverage, most businesses run on debt. They take a loan out, it might be seasonal, and then
Mhm.
they pay it back with revenues, as the season brings in the cash. And those are totally legitimate venture funding aspects that don't get talked about as much as people like me, which are angel investors, or my friends who are venture capital investors. All
Right.
legitimate
Yeah,
opportunities.
absolutely, Scott. So now let's take the first question. So if we are thinking, or I am at least thinking that the audience today is aware that to pitch to a startup founder, to pitch to an investor, you have to have a pitch deck. And if you have a pitch deck and you are pitching, uh, or you started pitching to a lot of investors, I have heard or read somewhere that it took 106 pitching by Amazon to get the first check.
Right. Right.
So for that kind of a business model also, and they were the industry movers. They changed the whole industry or the buying pattern of a customer. But if a company like Amazon takes 105 pitch to get the first check, so the lesson here for the founders is that don't get demoralized, don't get bogged down, keep moving forward. And one of the question is, how should founders deal with rejection from investors?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's hard as a founder, right? Every rejection feels personal because this is your baby, but it is just business. And my solution to this is to improve your yield, to improve your hit rate, is reverse the amount of time that you spend on outreach with the amount of time that you spend on research. So the problem with well, first of
Yes.
all, Amazon was a long time ago, right? So nobody knew what he was talking about. So it's no
Yeah.
surprise it took over 100. I mean, it was a fantasy. Who could build this amazing thing you're talking about, Jeff? Wow, he he built it. Wow, amazing, right? So these days there are more opportunities in general, right? But the problem is that there are so many now, and you have so many ideas that you need to narrow your focus and do the research. So if your idea is that you're going to do 30% of your time on building a deck and getting ready, and then 70% reaching out, I would say you've got it wrong. You got to spend 70% of your time on researching, finding the right investors, and 30% on what you're going to feed them. Okay. So that means that you need to look by sector, by industry, by country, by stage. You need to figure out the investment thesis and the previous investments of all these firms that you're targeting to find who's a match. And if you spend more time on the research, then you probably, I mean, you still might need 100. This is not easy stuff, right? There's no magic bullet here. But I bet you that'll be cut in half, if not by 75%, to get you farther, faster to the finish line, because you have aligned your needs with the interests of the investors. That is the key that people don't talk enough about, I think. So that will reduce your rejection. Is still hard. The other thing I would say is always ask for feedback. Don't just slink away. Bummer, I'm so disappointed. Of course you are. But hey, is there anything you could offer to make, help me improve? And do you know anyone who might be interested? Or if we address these things in our deck or our presentation that you found lacking, could we come back? Right? Those are kind of 3 follow-ups that are free to ask. They may say no, but odds are you'll get at least one of them that's helpful.
There is another question about what legal considerations should a startup be aware of during the funding process. So that in itself could be a full-fledged LinkedIn Live event, because it starts, in my view, from co-founder agreements. And many a time I have seen that there are 2 or 3 co-founders who have put in some capital, working, but they don't have a contract in place. So Scott, you are uniquely capable of answering this question, because you are an attorney, that too a Stanford trained attorney. So go ahead.
Okay, sure. Well, this is not legal advice, but in general, on a strategic theoretical level, there's a long checklist, right? I think that the short answer, given that we're short on time, find a good attorney. And this isn't because I make any money referring to attorneys, but because you need a real attorney who really does venture capital type work all the time, because they know all this stuff, right? For them, this is easy. If you use your uncle who is a divorce lawyer, or your cousin who does car accidents and dabbles in business law, you're going to get screwed up. So real attorneys are expensive, but they do this all the time. This is like if you have a brain tumor, you don't go to a pediatrician, right? You go to find a specialist. And the combination of where you're domiciled and jurisdictions and tax laws and 83Bs and QSBS, and I mean, I'm only started at the tip, right? I mean, there's 1,000 other IP agreements and contracts and partner sharing agreements, like you said. I mean, there's 100 things, all of which can trip you up. And this is one of those areas where you can really get hurt, because you can run along in ignorance, like, oh, I'm fine, everything's fine, until it isn't, right? And then you could lose your work, right? And that would be a real shame. So I guess given our time available, I would say find introductions. We're happy at startupcouncil.org. We're happy to do that, or I'm sure Anshuman is as well.
To secure VC funding from another country, it is often required to get the company registered in that country. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
What is your view on that, Scott?
Yeah, I can mostly speak as a U.S. investor. U.S. investors don't tend to invest in companies that are in other countries. It's not because we don't want to. Like, I'd love to invest in companies in India, right? I'll be in Bangalore in a couple months, right, with you, Anshuman, right? I mean, there's lots of opportunity there. The problem is the tax laws here in the States don't make it easy for us. We can make a lot more money more easily if we only invest in U.S. companies. So I can't speak so well to Africa or Europe or Asia, but if you want to access U.S. investors, then you'll need to be registered here. The standard these days is a Delaware corporation. In the U.S. state of Delaware, it's called a C corporation, and you need to set up one of those. But you can do that without living here or moving to Delaware. You can you hire as a service. You need a registered agent. You need to file, I think, probably some paperwork with the U.S. government's Internal Revenue Service so that they know who owns this. But you do not have to be here physically, but your business should be if you want to attract funding from American investors.
There are 2 questions which are very similar. One is from Nandita Tiwari. What are some common mistakes founders make when pitching to investor? And one is from Assis Dawa. How should founders prepare for investor meeting effectively? So I think we can club these two questions in one.
Yeah.
My view is that, know your numbers, be prepared, tell the business, as Scott said earlier, rather than the technology. But go
Yeah.
ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I agree. I still agree with that. Yeah, numbers. We investors eat numbers. If you don't give us numbers, we're going to starve. So if you are a conceptual person, a marketing person, a non-technical person, and you're like the vision person, that's awesome. But if that's all you talk about without numbers to back it up, we're going to lose interest because frankly we don't believe you, right? We need numbers. So it would be my number one as well. Another one, just quickly, is there's a lot of controversy, Anshuman. Maybe you have an opinion on this. Often people insist that there only be one presenter, only one person is allowed to talk per company. Sometimes a team will come up and they'll want to, two people, I mean, 3 or 4 is too many, but maybe 2, and they can take turns. Personally, I think that's fine as long as it's well rehearsed and they don't lose a bunch of time with the transitions and they fumble and interrupt each other, right? But some people insist that that's very distracting. So I think there's 2 schools of thought on that. What do you prefer?
Yeah, but my personal preference is that there should be only one jockey. You cannot change the jockey while you are running.
Okay.
Because the tempo gets lost. 2 people have 2 different type of voice. They have 2 different type of pitch. And if the hand holding or the mic change doesn't happen very smoothly, then you completely lose that, what happened here. And, so I feel that, if you are pitching on a 3-minute or up to a 10-minute, there should be only one jockey who is going to present that day. And another one is that, if it is a physical event, then I don't want 2 other co-founders just, standing on the stage.
Yeah, that's weird. That's right. There's 2 people like lurking in the background, right?
It looks very weird.
Yeah.
So don't do that, please.
Yeah.
How does the funding landscape differ for social enterprises?
Well, social enterprises, I run office hours on my YouTube channel, as you know, and I get this kind of question a lot. And social enterprises are amazing, right? The world is a better place because of charitable, nonprofit, and social impact type ventures. Absolutely. It's just not a business, though, right? It's a different kind of thing. So it's a different discussion. We could have that discussion, but that isn't this discussion. I think you need to find a different audience, and the key word you're looking for is impact. Impact is the buzzword that means charitable or venture investment that has a dimension beyond just profits, like it's helping the climate or a certain minority or some cause, right? And that's totally legitimate stuff, but it's a different lane than mainstream investing. So you'd be well served to find people that focus on that and talk to them. It's a different community, I guess what I'm saying. So great stuff, but it's a different channel.
Yeah. There are different set of investors out there who just invest in social enterprises. So
that's what I meant.
And what you said earlier, Scott, that you spend 70% of your time in researching the investor and 30% time in feeding the investor is important. It becomes very, very important here. Het Patel says, how important is the scalability of a business model in securing funding?
Well, it's hugely important. What investors are looking for is things that will grow cheaply, right? We want capital efficiency is a buzzword that we often use. And that means spending the money and getting a lot of result for each dollar spent, right? So scalability is critical. And that's why software investing is so important or so popular, I should say. I get a lot of inquiries. People are frustrated because, I have this technology or that technology, or I want to open a restaurant or a hair salon or a t-shirt shop or something, canoe rental, whatever it is. Those businesses can be legitimate, lovely businesses, but they don't scale the way software does. The whole point of software, what scaling means is that you can add additional users with no additional cost, essentially, or no minimal marginal cost. And that's why something like Facebook can build, it takes billions, but they build a huge infrastructure, but then they can add 1 million new people a day and not even really feel it. And 1 million new people a day means potential profits from 1 million people a day. That's why they're the behemoth that they are. So scalability is very important if you're talking to software investors. But like I was talking about earlier, and Anshuman just referenced, if you do your research, if you're opening a pizza restaurant, you don't want to be talking to software investors. You want to talk to people who aren't so worried about scalability, right? Scalability is my thing. I'm a software investor. If you don't have some sort of scalability, we're going to have a very short conversation. I'll be polite, but I will refer you to somebody else, just like I just did with the social impact stuff. Great stuff. I don't know it. Not my thing, right? if you don't have scalability, you need to find investors who are okay with that. And that's a legitimate answer. It's not the typical answer on shows like this where we mostly talk about software scalable investments. But if you want to build a new car company or a physical, you want to manufacture basketballs or something like physical, it's a different set of investors. So you need to be in a different room. And back to the idea, do more research before you do your outreach, and you'll have a much higher hit rate.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott. We are already at the half hour, but I would like to quickly take two important questions. How can founders negotiate better terms with investors? Is a question from Anurag Mishra.
Oh, wow. That's okay. So Anurag with the late question. Let's see. Well, better terms are about leverage. It's easy to think, especially if you have an engineering background or maybe you're a doctor or somebody who's educated in systems approaches, to think that there are clear answers and a clear path to. So this is an equation with a single answer. Sorry, it's not how this works. This is a haggle. This is an old school marketplace bazaar negotiation. So if you need to come in armed with all the facts that you have and then fight. And I don't mean fight in a mean physical way, but negotiate and be confident about your assumptions. We make this much money, this much profit. We anticipate this kind of growth. And we think this is true because of these facts. Again, numbers. And if you have numbers to make your case, your valuation will go up. Of course, you need to combine that with soft skills. You need to be a person who is well-spoken and would be fun to work with. Like if you sign up with a venture investor, you're together, you're getting married. I mean, venture investments last longer than most marriages, 5, 6, 10, 20 years. These got to be people that you want to hang out with and spend time with. So that combination is tough. But if you can be smart, coachable, know your numbers, are confident with good numbers that demonstrate traction, every one of those factors and a bunch more, of course, will increase your valuation. Is that helpful, Anshuman? What do you think? I must have missed.
Absolutely. I think the numbers, where you are, and how rich you are at that point of time in terms of, customer acquisition and all attracts the investor. What are some unconventional ways to secure funding? I think Scott has already answered that. There are government grants available. There are so many SBA loan, debt. Those things are out there. I would request Pran, if you can, see the recording, you'll be able to get that. One last question from Priyanka. What are the emerging trends in early stage investment that startups should be aware of? Emerging trends in early stage investment.
Yeah. These are good questions. People are paying attention.
Yes.
Okay. Well, the big one, obviously.
I see one trend going out here in Silicon Valley is AI. So
yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Exactly. Yeah. Artificial intelligence is everywhere. If you don't have some angle or at least appreciation of how artificial intelligence is going to impact your business, you need to figure one out right away. I've been working with AI more myself as I'm working on this new book that I mentioned, and it's amazing how quickly it's improving, and it's only going to accelerate. So I think that may be the only answer really that matters right now. It's going to change it's already driven valuations way up, and it's changing business models. It's changing staffing. It's changing it's going to change marketing. So many aspects. I think that's probably I think that answer probably dwarfs anything else right now.
Yeah.
I guess interest rates would have been the other one, right? We were in a zero interest rate environment for a long time, at least here in the United States. And that led to a real inflation of everything. And now we're not. So, but that's kind of historical now, but you need to be aware of the impact of those business cycles. If you've been at this for a while, like I have, you can grow up in one cycle and not realize that you're in a bubble, either positive or negative bubble. And then it moves on. You're like, oh, now you're a fish in the water. You didn't see the water. Now you can tell, right? So monitoring that is helpful, but AI, again, dwarfs any of that, I think.
Thank you so much, Scott, for your time today. On Startup Game Changer LinkedIn Live. Truly appreciate, you on the call, and, we will be publishing this podcast at various places also. Thank you so much.
All right. Good to see you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.